In over 3 decades, I've learned that truly great car dealerships are only great because of one thing: leadership. So I'm sitting down with the great men and women inspiring automotive on Tim Talks, automotive leadership and beyond. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another episode of Tim Talks Leadership and Beyond. My guest today is the one and only, I think there's some people that you just know by one name. Bono, Rocky, and then there's just Kyle. Mr. Kyle himself, we have from ASOTU, from so many other things today. We were just talking about what is happening with ASOTU, what they are doing, not only with ASOTU, but what was happening in Kyle's life and what's going on. And I am super excited to have a chat just for a few minutes today. Hopefully it encourages you as we continue to say, no one is smarter than everyone. Let's just get better together. And we're going to get better today. The one and only Kyle. How are you doing, brother?
Up?
Welcome.
I'm good. You know what's interesting? I think I've been on Tim Talks before, back in a former iteration of it, Yep. Almost 4 years ago. At this point. I had zero gray in this beard. I'm now donning the gray.
Yeah, I've got it too. You just can't see it. It's a special camera angle.
It's a lighting thing. Yeah,
it's a lighting thing. So you can't see my gray. What's been going on, brother?
Man, I think. Well, I posted on LinkedIn a couple days ago. I said it's been 3.5 years since I left the retail side of the business, and everybody tells you when you're starting something, all the entrepreneur books, all the posts on LinkedIn, it's like, no, just, you got to get past the 3-year mark. And, it's starting to finally kind of like get to a point where like, oh, this was all worth it. This is all coming together. And so that's been a lot of fun. Family's amazing. We have 3 wonderful kids that we get to homeschool, and I get to work from home now. So I come down and, rub their heads at lunch and all that type of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of like the broad overview of how's it going. So.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. It's a lot of hard work, but at the same time, when you realize that, what you're working on and your vision, that was just a vision. In fact, I would argue, let's go back a little bit talking about that. I think it's really important, very important, quite frankly, to know the genesis of, your conversations with Paul and creating ASOTU. And even before that, before there was even ASOTU, you at the car dealership. But I can remember, having I think it was lunch with you. And we were kind of casting the vision, on the back of napkins at the, I don't know if we actually wrote anything down, but let's talk about, because you actually spent time in a dealership and did a little, very similar to my story. You spent a lot of time in a dealership, sat in a lot of different chairs, but talk about, wanting to, give back and create something that made a difference. Let's take us back there.
Yeah. I'm going to give like 2 very short stories. The first one starts with this guitar actually behind me, and I haven't told the story a lot.
I want to hear it.
This guitar right here, it's a really nice guitar. I love it. It plays beautifully. The story isn't about the actual guitar. It's about Aaron Hill, who is now not in the car business, has done some amazing things in the car business, but he was my general manager at Sandy Sansing Nissan back in 2010. And it was there that I realized that the car business was way more than just like me selling the next car. And Aaron Hill gave me the impetus to go like, no, commit to this as a career, be a part of this industry. And the way that he got me to do that was because my mind's eye at my very young age was on buying this guitar. And he said, if you commit to this as more than just selling the next car and commit to it as a career goal, to be in this business, then it can do wonderful things. And in my mind's eye at that young age, it was buying a guitar, but that kind of broadened my horizon for, this is an industry that I can be a part of. 9 months later, I'm sitting there. I was, at that point, I was leading worship at a church there in Pensacola. And I'm sitting there in the front row after I had just led worship, and the pastor's standing there. And I can't remember the exact thing, but it sticks in my mind because he goes, you know, some of the professions out there that are known for lying, like lawyers and used car salespeople, and like 4 or 5 things. And I'm sitting in the front row. He knows what my job is. I'm selling cars at this point, right?
Yeah.
And calls this out as like a lying profession.
Mm.
And in that moment, I was just like, no, that's not true. Like, I know that's true in every industry, and there are aspects of any industry that has that, and the car business has made a bad name for itself. But like, I know personally, and I know the people around me are not that persona.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it was that moment that actually like is the full circle moment to what I'm getting to do now. And that like kind of like stirred in me 4 years ago, that said like, no, this, like, you have to do something about this. And so when I was in retail, it was doing something about it in what I could impact, right? The leadership that I had, the when I was selling cars the right way, the training, the organization, the process management, the marketing, all of those things was a very personalized approach to doing it in real time. And I just saw, 4 years ago and got to sit with you and a lot of other leaders and go, okay, no, it's time to like broaden that message and bring it to more people. So.
No, I think it's, I think faith plays a big role, and the foundation of how you serve and how you, because at the end of the day, we're serving people. At the end of the day, and there's a lot of great people out there that don't think the same, and that's fine. I just think that having that foundation really sets the tone for, wanting to make Maxwell says, I want to make a difference. I want to be around leaders that say, I want to make a difference, with people that want to make a difference, doing something that makes a difference. And speaking of that, I don't know that there's too many people in the space that don't know or haven't heard about ASOTU. You guys have done an incredible job of social media, and your events are extremely high tech, and the presentations and the media around them. So before we went live, you were talking about how excited you were. You just came off a management meeting where you were fired up. So I'm here. I got my popcorn. I want to hear what's going on. So I'll just, first time caller, or she's a long time listener, first time caller. I'll sit back and listen.
Well, there's a lot from a business perspective. There's a lot of really fun stuff happening. We had a great NADA, got to do a lot of cool things in collaboration with NADA at the show. The More Than Cars series getting on Amazon Prime, Tubi, YouTube TV. So that's amazing. ASOTUCon is shaping up. It's, just over a month away at the time of recording this. It's shaping up to be our best yet, highest attended, some of the coolest partners coming alongside. And I know you guys will be there with Car Now. And so all of that, like from a broad business perspective and the impact that we get to have because of what we do as a business, are growing at a pace that I think, a 3-year-old company should expect to grow at if you've done the right things and put in the work and have the right team. The thing that I'm fired up about this morning is a lot more internal, but it really reflects externally what ASOTU is all about and the mission behind it. We go through our highs every single week on our all team meetings, and so it's just like 60 seconds. What was your high of the week? And we have a young lady on our team that was sharing that for the first time ever, she had felt like there wasn't political jockeying or like positioning, and it wasn't trying to downplay her role because of, what she could or couldn't do. And I'm listening to this conversation, to her share this, and also like all of the other highs that everybody's listing. And the only thing that I could think in my mind is the ability for these people to be like starting new newsletters about their faith, writing cookbooks, right? Starting new YouTube channels externally is all because not like what Paul, myself, Michael have done, but it's that the team is holding up a mirror to them going, no, look at who you really are. Not the thing that you've been like falsely told or the lies that you've told about yourself to yourself for so long, but like look at who you really are. Because if you look in our Slack threads, they're some of the most encouraging. It's almost like it'll gross you out how kind of encouraging they are. Sometimes it's like, oh my goodness, I love that you did that. Whoa, that is so cool. This is amazing. Great job. Kudos to this. Wow, that's a really cool creative thing. Like, oh, hey, this person just created this and they shared it with me. I'm going to share it with the rest of Slack, right? All of that is happening. And what it really says is, no, if you're a part of this, we're going to hold up a mirror to you and say, it's going to be a clearer, better picture of who you really are. And we want to reflect that back to you so you can continue giving more of those things. And like, I got emotional in our team meeting this morning because it was just so clear to me that people were experiencing the best of themselves outside of their work environment because their team has been reflecting the best of them in their work environment. So
I love that.
That's why I'm fired up today.
No,
it's not because like we sold a bunch of things or anything like that. That's why I'm fired up.
Yeah, you know, it's amazing. It's almost like the golden ticket, right? It's almost like Willy Wonka and who gets the golden tickets. It's almost, you know, I had the privilege this week actually to speak to the students at Northwood University.
Yeah.
I believe it's the only, in fact, we're going to have the seniors on an episode of Tim Talks, and we're going to set up the camera to where we just do it directly from there. But I was so, you know, you set out when you do things like that to encourage and to lift up. But what we find is, and this is a leadership, and yes, this is a leadership podcast, and this is a leadership in life lesson. You know, I wish that 53-year-old Tim could go back and talk to 24 or even 20-year-old Tim. That's what I told them. And understanding that when we look at at your life as, number one, daily, it's a gift. It absolutely 100% is a gift. Nobody is promised tomorrow. You know, it's been a rough couple of weeks in my life. I lost a dear friend who you would never think in a million years would pass from cancer. I don't know if you guys have seen the show Reacher, but that was my friend. He was a big man. He was 6'1", 6'2", 245, one of the strongest guys I've ever seen in my life. And cancer took that from him, but it did not until listening to, I didn't see him on his last days. I've been on the road, and that's another thing that rocked me. But when you hear people talk about him, he was encouraging others up until the last day. And I think as leaders, whether it's a ASOTU or whether it's a dealership, when you actually, not just because there's a lot of people, and I'm getting preachy because I know this for a fact, and I'm not calling out any people. I'm calling out myself, quite frankly, just to be, you know, because we all love us some us, right? And we might say something on social media or make a post, but is that really reflect us? And once we really understand and we pour into our people, it's amazing what happens when we start thinking less about ourselves, wake up, you know, with gratitude, and then allow the people that call us boss, allow the people that look to us, giving them an environment to where they can create and they're poured into, and they know that they are being encouraged and lifted up and given the platform to do it. Something miraculous happens, especially at 53. I told the students, I'm on the back nine, unless I live to 107, which maybe it's possible. I don't know. There's some people out there, but at the end of the day, I'm on the back nine. And you know, having this big, strong man, you know, 3 years ago, he didn't know that. You know what I mean? I mean, it's given me a new perspective on life to truly pouring into everyone that's put in front of me every day. And even when I mess up, because none of us are perfect, you know, making it right with that person, I think it's so incredible. And to live life that way, wow. I mean, I dare you. I really, really dare you. And oh, by the way, you can still sell a lot of cars. And oh, by the way, you can still be really successful. In fact, what happens is when each of your people, again, that call you boss, have that type of environment and that type of culture, incredible things happen. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. So you know Andy Gelcher, I'm sure, or have at least heard of him. He, you know, we had Mohawk
Yep.
on More Than Cars season 1. And in our interview with him, he said the thing that always sticks with me is we want to make a place where people can become their favorite version of themselves, right? But that takes other people making sure that they can become, you can't like just become your own favorite version of yourselves. Every self-help book, every 10 steps, every coach consultant, like it takes other people pouring into you.
Mm-hmm.
What I think what that does is, so like you just said, you can sell more cars doing that, right? Like what would it look like if you were a salesperson and you were after your clients, your customers, seeing their favorite versions of themselves throughout the sales process, right? You reflecting on them the best version of themselves, right? That this is what's good. This is how it's good. And that takes a lot of guts to kind of like think that way. But everybody wants to be the hero of their own story.
Mm.
And so that's really what you're doing is you're going, let's make you the hero of this story, this car purchasing story. So at the end, you get to stand up at the front of your car like Rocky and be like, I did it.
Yeah.
I bought this car.
Yeah.
I think that's a win. When we went through this and Michael Cirillo was on the call, you know him well. He said, what that really encourages me in is that for us at ASOTU, that's really what we're here to do. It's not to shine a light on ASOTU. We obviously, we love big stages. We love cool graphics, but the whole goal, and Paul from the beginning has said, no, our goal is to hold up a mirror to the auto industry and say, no, look at who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the cool things you do. Scott Beeler is building schools. We got, people that are feeding entire like cities of kids.
Yeah.
Right. We've got people that are going into middle schools and high schools, showing them the career opportunities that they may have. I'm seeing cars given away left and right. You watch Vehicles for Change and what they're doing was like, look at who you really are, industry. You're not the stories that everybody's been trying to tell you, right? The best version of yourself is this caring, community-centric, incredible industry that holds up the American culture on its back, has a place in every corner and every little aspect of this entire community and culture of our world. Like that's who you really are. Believe that and live in that. And that's when we become the most attractive industry to be a part of.
It's so true. And you mentioned, and Troy Duhon was on here. He builds an orphanage in a different country every single year. He feeds 1,000 people a day. That's just in New Orleans. But what do you think? You get to hang around the Patricks, Abads, and the Liza Borges, and all of those people. And why do you think, when we opened up and I talked about the golden ticket, like this is, pouring into your people, creating that type of culture. Obviously there's checks and balances. There's a lot more to it. It's just not that easy. Car guys and gals are listening to this thinking, you got to buy the right inventory. You got to make sure that your turn's right on your pre-owned cars. You got to there's a lot more. I'm not trying to wave a magic wand and, hey, be nice to people when you're all of a sudden going to sell a billion cars. Not what I'm saying. But it definitely is part of it, understanding that the structure is the same. Why do you, because as you go around the country, I wonder, and this wasn't planned, this is just, and you might not have an answer, but I'm just trying to figure out, that is, unfortunately, there's a lot of great people out there, but not the norm. We had the privilege of, it's amazing to me. We just had the privilege of signing Fletcher Jones. And it's not debatable. They're the largest Mercedes-Benz store in the world. In fact, I was told by Dave, the GM of the Newport Beach store, which by the way did 110 cars just on Saturday. Saturday.
That's unbelievable.
And they said that at any given day, they will, because obviously they have stores in NorCal, Southern California, Las Vegas, Chicago. They have more Mercedes-Benz on the ground than Mercedes-Benz USA. That's how big they are. But that being said,
ridiculous.
and by the way, the largest Audi store in the world as well. So they own
Wild.
Audi and Mercedes-Benz, and of course they have Porsche, and they've got one. Anyway, on and on. But my point is this: as successful as they are, every GM that I talk to, Heather Lewis, shout out to Heather, like everybody is so happy. You would think, because I've walked into other meetings where they're obviously not you would think, and they were listening to every word that myself and my team, because they were looking at things like, okay, here's the closing percentage. It's higher than what we're doing now. If we add X amount of BDC reps, we could generate. That's how their brains worked. Right. And they were happy and they were humble about it. That's why those are the people that keep breaking the glass ceiling to get better. Yes. It's never good enough. It's it's better and better and better and better. And the ABADs and the Lizas and those type of people. But at the same time, we still have, why do you think it's that, the person that, and I'm not being ugly, because I wasn't I was the number one CPO store, but I wasn't the number one Lexus store in my town. There was a lot of work, but it's the people, why is mediocrity so comfortable? Why is mediocrity so, just in life, man?
Well, I mean, I think, what sucks is that you can make a lot of money multiple ways, right? And like, money drives so many people. And so like, you can make a lot of money lying, cheating, stealing.
Yep.
You can actually, in the car business, especially over the last 5 years, you don't even have to lie, cheat, and steal. You can be mediocre and make a lot of money. So the question always comes back to like, why change? Because I'll still make money, right? And I think it's deep rooted in some people that the person on the other side of that is much more important than the dollar, right? And that actually, like, if that's the case, the dollar follows. It's a trailing indicator of success with people. And there's a natural thing that has to come from some people, and you can either be born with it or grow into it or be coached into it or led into it or see it and then reflect it. And I think, maybe the difficulty for me is I've just surrounded myself with so many of those people that I'm like, man, I think it's becoming ubiquitous in our industry, right? That if you don't become that, then like you're just going to get drowned out. And I think that at some point will be the case. Like it'll just be ubiquitous to be better, and the ones that aren't will get drowned out. And it won't be because of like profitability. It'll be because consumers and employees are just done. They just get fed up with it and they just stop. They just see that there's better options. It becomes universally accepted that doing business with a better dealer or a better person is just the only way, and that you can do it because the world is flat, essentially. But I'll go to my buddy Ronnie Lowenfield at Casa Auto Group. Actually, his brother Luke, I was on a phone call with him, and I was like, "What do you really want people to experience when they do business with you or an employee?" He goes, "I want them to feel loved." And I'm like, threw me back in my chair. That's a different type of person, right? That's not like, I want to make a lot of money. I want them to be successful, and I want them to feel loved. And so that's not everyone. But I think the mediocrity and the negative side of the business will weed itself out over the next 4 to 5 years, because it will be the only choice to, that the consumer won't put up with it anymore.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think that, I always say the truth will always lie somewhere in the middle, with everything. And I don't want to get into a tariff talk at all. Maybe we'll have a podcast.
You're about to. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
But this industry, I jump in Clubhouse just a couple of times because the travel this year has been absolutely crazy, which is good. At least people want to hear from me, talk to me. But I was in there a couple of days ago, and I said, look, there's a lot of noise. I can't remember, I remember obviously after, in 2001, 9/11, we went through a couple months of, oh my gosh, what's happening? And then the automotive industry bounced back. Mm-hmm. We went through 2008, especially with the GM bankruptcy. And yes, I'm not taking taking any of that red, especially a lot of GM stores and downsizing. Yes, that was difficult, but for the most part, Cash for Clunkers came out and we rebounded very, very quickly.
For sure.
But those two were really the only ones that had a lasting, a couple months, but then we bounced right back. I can remember, obviously, COVID, which was the first Tim Talk, which was March 20th of 2020. And the reason we had it was ironic. It was, because dealerships were shut down in the state of Kentucky, which is close to you, but the state of Kentucky, salespeople weren't physically allowed in their dealerships. Right. And I worked very closely with Sarah Fisher on how to, so we put QR codes and text enabled, their phone numbers. So where they go work deals and all the stuff that we figured out. There was almost 500 people live, which doesn't happen on any podcast unless you're Joe Rogan, right? Like 500 plus people. It was almost like, the churches across the country after 9/11, like churches were packed, right? Like, oh my gosh. And then people have short memories. And then, 2020 ended up being, we all thought car business was going away. It ended up being the best 3 years in the history of the car business. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I would argue the dealers, like some of the ones that we mentioned here, that will probably not pull back, but push forward and to increase their marketing spend.
Oh, man.
We're talking about, interest rates probably being cut 4 or 5 times this year. Who knows what's going to happen, but I do think that's when the things that we're talking about, the right leadership mindset, to be calm. It's our job as leaders to be calm, and things are just going to take place and continue to pour into your people. People still need to have.
Just remind your people who they are.
Yeah.
Like you're not a failure. You're not weak. You're not poor in spirit. You've gone through this before. Remember? Yeah. Remind them who they are. This is who you are in this moment. You are not scared. You are not afraid. You are not fearful for the next thing. You're not shaken by these external influences. Like you're see, I'm gonna get preachy because I can't not say you're a child of God. Like remember who you are, you know. Sorry, I knew that you could handle that, but
I can handle that. And I'm gonna add to it, I really believe that, and I'm making this up. They say that, most statistics are made up. This is made up, but I think it's pretty close if we all want to examine our own lives. I know in my life, 90% of the things that I've worried about, and I'm just pulling that out of my backside, never happen. The things that we think are horrible never happen. And I was listening to an interview on a lady that was getting ready to turn 100. And hopefully this encourages you today listening, because most people listen on their way into work and commuting, but let me encourage you today. They said, what would you change? You're getting ready to turn 100. What would you change about your life if you could go talk to 20-year-old you? And she said, you know what? She paused. And she said, I always said, I can't wait when. I can't wait till my kid can walk. I can't wait till maybe they graduate and, I have the house back to I can't wait and we live our lives. I can't wait till this tariff stuff passes and it goes back to normal. I can't wait till the stock market rebounds. I can't wait till, this gets bought or that gets bought. I can't wait till, and before we know it, we look back, there's more years behind us than in front of us. And we missed, ladies and gentlemen, the opportunity to dominate every day, to love on people right where you are today. Because we don't know what they're going through. We have no idea, but it is amazing what happens when we encourage others, when we pour into others and we lead that way. And sometimes there's things that maybe you can't lead that way. But when we have that mindset, I told the students this week, obviously I'm on, I said it on this episode again, I have more years behind me than probably in front of me. And I don't know who's going to get it, but I'm going to pour into somebody hopefully every single day. And what happens it sets the tone and lives are much better. Kyle, final thoughts. What do you want to tell the team, the people listening? Just give us a little bit of encouragement today and we'll land the plane.
I'm going to struggle to follow that encouragement, but I am going to say Yeah. I mean, my encouragement is to live today, what you can today. Tomorrow will worry about itself. And love your people more than you love your cars, your profit, your home,
Somebody
your
said that.
anything like
Yeah.
that, and the
Needs
rest
to
will
be on a
follow.
t-shirt.
They're all trailing indicators.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you, Kyle, for taking, I know ASOTU's coming up. You've got a zillion. I've put on conferences before. You supported us on our first little conference that we did. It was so much work that we don't do them anymore. But and so, well, we ended up raising in 2 years. We raised 100,000 for Make a Wish. So
Come on now.
it benefited some people. But listen, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it today. Number one, Kyle's not perfect. Number two, God knows I'm not perfect. All you got to do is ask my wife. But at the end of the day, I really believe that is the golden ticket. That is what people are missing. That's why the Fletcher Joneses do what they do. That's why the Beaver Toyotas and the Lexus of South Atlantas and the Liza Borges and CMA. That's why they do what they do. And every time you see them, there is joy on their face because something happens when we treat others, when we live life that way. And as I just said before, let's not live life that when we say, well, I can't wait until this happens. You know what? Life is happening today. Be the impact that you want to see. Be the hands and feet. Encourage someone today. Lift them up. And I dare you. Let's see what happens to your team. And let's see if they're encouraged and fired up. And let's see how many cars you sell. And let's see how incredible ASOTU is going to be. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Tim Talks. We love you. Thank you for taking 30 minutes or so of your day, usually on your commute. And as we always say, no one is smarter than everyone. Let's just keep getting better together. We'll see you next time.